Hey everybody, GP here, and I recently released a video called Being the Pure Witness, Self-Awareness, Being the Pure Witness, a guided self-inquiry meditation. And I got a comment on it that really touched me, and touched on something I think is extremely important in this whole question of awakening and spiritual growth. It came from this fellow, Next Step in Corp something or other. What he said was, normally I'm in the grab of person, just as others. While walking, all I have to do is raise my eyebrows once and I can perceive atmosphere and people and traffic around me aloofly. But it doesn't stay for more than 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm back to becoming just like another guy, any other guy. There's a big myth in the history and in the practice and in the understanding of spiritual awakening. You know, we've all heard the great stories. You know, we all hear the last story of somebody awakening. All right, the big one. You know, oh, the heavens part and angels sing and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just this glorious, wonderful thing that lasts forever. Of course, until you've actually experienced that, you have no idea what that is. So our minds are going to project stuff on that. The mind's idea of ecstasy and bliss, and everything that goes along with it. And we've all heard those stories. We've heard those stories, and not the whole lifetimes of practice and effort that went into that final thing that happened. And even Ramana Maharshi, the very famous sage you're probably all familiar with, said that if somebody looks like they made it easily, right, that they didn't have to do much and had the Great Awakening, then you can be sure that in other lifetimes they've done their sadhana. And Ramana should know, because he's one of those guys that had experienced it with 2 hours of work. I mean, it was a couple hours of work that when he was about 16 years old, completely unplanned and unasked for it, boom, it happened. So first we have to dispose of this myth that it's this glorious, whatever we think it is, whatever you think the Great Awakening, the enlightenment, self-realization is. I invite all of you to just set it aside, right? Because it's just a speculation in our minds. So it's going to be a projection of our minds. So it's not even going to be close to the real thing. The truth of the matter is self-realization or enlightenment or awakening is not an experience, and it can't be put into words. So for you, in specific next step, one thing I'd like to point out, right, is that you've had an experience of that openness, that awakening. Now, it's not really an experience. What happens is, the clouds part and you see the sun. The mind, the ego, goes into abeyance for a little bit, and what remains is the real you that's been there the entire time. And all of the feelings that aren't it, but are the perfume of it. They're the kind of the emotional effect. They're not actually it. It's something else that isn't being experienced. In fact, maybe for the first time in lifetimes, you're not having an experience. You're just being yourself. Now, if you recognize that, then we can say, man, what a gift. What a great thing. When you think that it lasted for 5 or 10 minutes, I've had those times when it lasted for a second, right? I mean, it was obvious what had happened. It was just a flash, though, less than a second. I mean, can't even tell. But it was clear, boom. And it had a profound effect, even though, in the next minute, the aperture closed and I was back back into the sense of a person. So if you also consider that you have undoubtedly, as Ramana pointed out, in many lifetimes been doing the kind of practices and inner work in God knows where in the world, or what time in the world, that have led to these moments of real understanding and true seeing that emerged for you. And when you consider that those of us on the planet who've had that, who've experienced the awakening, experienced enough of an awakening to set our feet firmly on this path, is extremely small in relation to the number of people there are on the planet. Right? Was it 7.8 billion people? Is this almost 8 billion people on the planet? And while the number of people that are having a awakening is increasing by an enormous amount, the internet having a lot to do with it, exposure to the kind of teaching and training. And I'm sorry for the noises. It's kind of warm here, so I have the windows open. Somebody's backing up in one of those trucks. I'm so delighted to see that it is becoming more and more common, that the words enlightenment, awakening, self-realization are coming into mainstream use. I'd never heard those words when I was a kid, right? I didn't hear them until I was in my maybe 30s or 40s. So it's really remarkable that it's happening at all. So here's the deal. There's, when you've tasted something as sweet as a moment without the ego, without the false sense of I, without being in the grip of the person, it is so wonderful that, of course, the contrast between that and our normal state of mind is so huge that our normal state of mind becomes almost unbearable. And we want more of that. Perfectly natural. Right? But that happened. They say there's a practice, and you do a practice. But ultimately, the self-realization is a matter of grace. There's something bigger than our human selves is involved in, kind of takes over and brings us those last few steps where the aperture opens and doesn't close. They call it in Zen, they call it the Dharma eye. Right? They say the Dharma eye is only partially opened, or it's finally opened. And if we keep in mind, we have no idea what that is, and ultimately we can't make it happen. There's a point at which you do all the practices and the inner work that you need to. And there's a point at which you realize, I can't go any further. Right? As Rumi put it so beautifully, the power that brought me here must bring me home. And as Balayani put it, just exquisitely in his short but powerful book called Know Thyself, was God takes the last step on the journey that never happened. Such a profound statement to see that. So what do we do then? I just kind of sit around and wait? No, we practice compassion towards ourselves and towards others. We cultivate the highest virtues that we possibly can. We heal, right? We recognizing fully that enlightenment, self-realization, is not a reward for good effort or for good behavior or for doing all the right things. It's available freely to absolutely anyone, and there are no prerequisites. Sometimes, somebody who's a real despicable character can suddenly have an enormous awakening. Something cracks, it cracks open, and boom, away you go. And people who have been practicing for 30 years can be a little bit upset about that. But it's not our practice that brings it about. So why practice? Because we are cultivating, well, as one person put it, enlightenment is an accident and practice makes you more accident prone. Right? We're just cultivating what it means to be a healthy, whole, loving human being, knowing full well that that's not going to be rewarded by something. So it's kind of like, you do everything you can, and you recognize that there's a point at which it's no longer in your hands. And even while you're doing, maybe inner work or just developing and becoming more refined and cultured and the like, you know in your heart that that's not what it's about. You're doing this because it's the best way to live. It's the best way to live a human life. Right? And your heart remains open, more than open, surrendered to that which is beyond what we can possibly do. Call it grace, call it the touch of truth, call it the invisible hand of love. Doesn't matter what you call it. It is something that appears to be like a higher power or higher self or the self or a God or something like that. It appears that way as we're identified with the person, but as that's less and less, we ultimately realize that we are one with that which appeared to have been calling us home. There's just a wonderful sense of surrender and humility in recognizing I can't do it. And also recognizing that it's the only thing that matters to me. Once you taste things like that, the desires for rather trivial pleasures and experiences in human life become less and less and less, and our desire for true oneness, for reality, for the truth, our desire for truth above all else, it becomes clearer and clearer and more the central motivation of our lives, and everything turns to serve that purpose, knowing full well that it's not up to you, right? That it's Stephen Jourdain, another enlightened fellow who never really became a teacher, so nobody has ever heard of them, put it this way. He says, I can show somebody where the door is, and I can show them how to knock. Right? But there's no connection between you knocking and that door opening. However, if you're there knocking, right, you're in the best possible place to see it when it does. Right? It kind of sums it all up. So I really hope that helps you. Next step, and if not, please comment on this one and let me know. And I hope it's beneficial to everyone on this channel, because that it's a big myth. You can't conceptualize that which is beyond concepts, right? So don't try. Don't try to come up with an image of it, because it's not an image, right? Reality, infinity, cannot be conceived of. Little parts, piece parts. But if you little piece parts of everything, look around. It's all that. It's all part of infinity. Infinity, the universe, truth. It's not out there. It's not that there's truth all around it, except here. I mean, you're it. You're part of it, and that is a realization. You're one with it. It's the realization that takes place. But don't try to conceive of what that's like, because you'll make a concept then that will actually bind you up and keep you from missing cues that are passing by, because they don't fit our idea. So let all the ideas go. Just drop any idea that makes you think you know what it is, and just be with yourself. Just you, empty of everything that isn't you. Just your own simple being. The answer is there. It's the deepest practice you can do. So, thank you for that. And I hope this video does the trick for all of you. Till next time, GP. Namaste.